The young and the restless spoilers shock. As the train chugged steadily along the tracks, the lavish interior of the first-class carriage seemed almost too pristine, too perfect. The passengers, all guests of Aristotle Dumas, were settling into their seats, absorbed by the surrounding beauty and the anticipation of what was to come. They marveled at the scenic landscapes passing by, unknowing that this seemingly peaceful journey was anything but. While they admired the passing scenery, their host, Aristotle, was observing them intently from his secluded compartment at the front of the train. His cold eyes narrowed as he watched them. To them, this was just another luxurious ride through the countryside, a momentary escape from their lives. But for Aristotle, this train ride was much more than that. It was the beginning of something far darker, a grand scheme meticulously designed to unfold in due time. Aristotle had planned every detail with precision, each move calculated to create chaos, to exact revenge, to finally bring an end to those who had wronged him. His mind raced as he considered the fate of those aboard this train, each passenger unwittingly playing a part in his game. But what kind of game was it? Just then, his assistant entered the compartment, his face unreadable. "Everything is ready, sir," he said, his voice low and steady. "The fuel, the lighters. It's all prepared as you instructed." Aristotle's gaze sharpened. The assistant's words sent a chill down his spine. Fuel? Lighters? He had instructed for them to be prepared, but hearing the words spoken aloud made the reality of his plan hit him all over again. The assistant handed over a small, nondescript bag filled with the necessary tools, gasoline and lighters. Aristotle's mind began to swirl with a deep, unfathomable rage. He was about to set something into motion. Something catastrophic. His hand hovered over the bag, uncertainty creeping into his thoughts. Was this the right thing to do? Would he really go through with it? His thoughts turned to Victor Newman, the man who had been his greatest enemy for years. Aristotle had always harbored a deep hatred for him, a resentment that had only grown with time. This moment, this train ride, was all a means to an end, Victor's downfall. But why, then, were the others included? Why were these innocent people being dragged into his vendetta? The guests on this train, members of Genoa City's elite, had no personal stake in Aristotle's battle with Victor. He paused for a moment, weighing the decision. He had no personal grievances with these people. Yet, here they were, unwitting participants in his plan. Was he really prepared to sacrifice them all just to get to Victor? Aristotle's fingers brushed over the gasoline canisters. They felt heavy in his hands, each one a reminder of how far he had fallen, of the monstrous decision he had already made. His mind flitted back to the years of betrayal, the countless ways Victor had outmaneuvered him, humiliated him, rendered him powerless. Aristotle had fought tooth and nail to reclaim his power, and now, as the pieces of his plan fell into place, it seemed he was finally going to have his revenge. But at what cost? As his assistant looked at him expectantly, Aristotle felt a pang of guilt. He had spent years creating this empire of fear and power. But now, he was about to burn it all down. Literally. Would he become just another monster in the eyes of history? Would his name go down as one synonymous with destruction, with madness? He stood up abruptly, his thoughts racing. This isn't just about Victor, he muttered to himself. This is about proving I am untouchable, that no one can stand in my way, not even those who've done no wrong. The train's whistle blew loudly, signaling the impending arrival at their destination. Aristotle's pulse quickened. The time for hesitation had passed. There was no turning back now. With grim determination, he turned to his assistant and nodded. Prepare the train. Let them think this is just another trip. But when the time comes, we strike. All of them, every last one. His voice was steady, a chilling calmness settling in. But the assistant hesitated, sensing a shift in his master's demeanor. Are you sure about this, sir? These people, they have no part in your conflict with Victor. They're innocent. Aristotle's eyes darkened. Innocent? None of us are innocent. The world has been shaped by power struggles, by the will of those who can control it. These people might not have wronged me directly, but they are part of the system that created the man I've become. No one is truly innocent in this world. His assistant said nothing, but his gaze lingered on Aristotle, knowing that the man he worked for was no longer the same. This was no longer just about a vendetta, it was about something far more twisted. As the train sped toward its final destination, Aristotle's mind raced with anticipation, uncertainty, and a dark satisfaction. He was about to rewrite the fate of every passenger on board. The question lingered in the air, would he become the monster he feared, or was this the moment when he would finally take control of his destiny? The guests remained oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. They laughed, chatted, and sipped their drinks, unaware that their lives hung in the balance. Aristotle Dumas had planned for everything to unfold perfectly, but as the moments ticked away, the weight of his actions threatened to crush him. Could he go through with it? Could he destroy everything to achieve his goal, even if it meant tearing apart the very fabric of his own humanity? Only time would tell if this night would end in destruction, or if Aristotle Dumas would discover too late that there were some lines even a monster could not cross. Aristotle stood at the front of the train, his eyes cold and calculating, watching as the world outside blurred into a patchwork of fleeting images. Inside the lavish carriage, the passengers were completely unaware of the darkness that was about to envelop them. To them, this was just another extravagant journey, another lavish event hosted by the enigmatic Aristotle Dumas. But in the twisted corners of his mind, Aristotle had already begun to orchestrate the most horrifying of tragedies. A plan so cruel and irreversible that it could only be born from a soul consumed by bitterness and rage. His vision was clear. The train, packed with some of Genoa City's most influential figures, would become his instrument of destruction. It would not be a simple fire, it would be the final chapter for the powerful families who had wronged him over the years. Victor, Nicky, Nick, and Victoria Newman, every single member of the Newman family, would perish in that blaze, their legacy reduced to nothing. Newman Enterprises, the crown jewel of their empire, would be left without an heir, crumbling into dust with no one to carry it forward. And Aristotle would finally claim victory over his greatest rival, the man who had made his life a living hell. But in his mind, the vengeance didn't stop there. He saw it all: families burned, legacies erased, and the world left with nothing but the echo of his triumph. His hand tightened around the matchbox in his pocket, the weight of the decision pressing down on him with every passing second. There was no turning back now. Yet, despite the cold precision of his thoughts, a flicker of doubt crept in. Aristotle had always been a man of control, but as the moment to strike drew nearer, a creeping realization gnawed at him. The plan, as perfect as it seemed, was flawed. There were too many variables. Too many people who were not meant to be on this train. Guests who had either declined the invitation to Paris or simply had no idea they were walking into a death trap. They had no stake in this. They were just pawns in Aristotle's game of revenge. Lily Winters, among the invited guests, had declined at the last minute, citing a vague unease about the whole affair. There was something about the journey that didn't sit right with her. She had always trusted her instincts, and this time, they were screaming at her. As the train hurtled through the countryside, Lily found herself growing increasingly uneasy. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Her eyes scanned the train car, lingering on the luxury around her, but all she could focus on was the smell that seemed to be creeping into the air, the unmistakable scent of gasoline. It was faint at first, but then it grew stronger, pungent and sharp. She inhaled deeply, her heart starting to race as panic slowly crept in. Something's wrong, she muttered to herself, her instincts kicking in like never before. Lily quickly moved through the cabin, her eyes darting nervously around as the scent of gasoline grew more intense. She reached the door to the next car and pushed it open, her breath catching in her throat as the fumes hit her full force. The source of the smell was unmistakable. The train had been rigged doused in gasoline, ready to be set aflame. Her mind spun as she realized the terrible truth. Aristotle had planned to burn them all alive. This wasn't just a simple act of revenge against Victor, it was an act of mass murder, one that would leave no survivors. She could feel the weight of the danger pressing down on her chest, and her thoughts raced. She needed to act, and fast. There was no time to waste. Lily rushed to the front of the train, her heart pounding in her chest as she searched for any way to stop this madness. She had to warn the others, but how could she convince them that their lives were in danger when they had no idea what was happening? "Everyone, listen to me," Lily shouted as she pushed her way into the next car, her voice trembling with urgency. "There's gasoline on this train. We're all in danger." But her warnings were met with confusion and disbelief. The guests, still blissfully unaware of the imminent threat, exchanged puzzled glances. They had no reason to suspect that anything was wrong, and they certainly didn't expect a catastrophe. Lily's heart sank as she realized that her words alone wouldn't be enough to save them. She needed to do more than just warn them, she needed to stop the train. But how? The realization hit her with terrifying clarity. This was no longer just a matter of saving herself, it was about saving everyone on board. As she stumbled through the train, trying desperately to find someone who could help, the sound of footsteps approached behind her. She turned, her eyes widening in horror as she saw Aristotle standing in the doorway, his face a mask of cold determination. "You're too late," he said, his voice low and calm. "There's no stopping it now." Lily froze, her heart hammering in her chest. This was it. Aristotle had been planning this for months, and now they were all trapped in his nightmare. "I won't let you do this," Lily cried, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. Aristotle didn't even flinch. His eyes locked onto hers, his expression unyielding. "It's already done," he said coldly. "No one can stop what's coming." In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. The train, the passengers, the sense of impending doom, it all blurred together into one overwhelming reality. Aristotle had made his move. The fire had already been set. And there was no way to stop it. Lily's mind raced as she desperately tried to think of a way to stop the madness. But the terror had already taken root, and the horrific truth was undeniable: a tragedy was about to unfold, and no one was safe. As the flames began to spread, consuming everything in their path, the once elegant train became a death trap. The passengers screamed in horror, scrambling to escape, but it was too late. The fire was unstoppable, and the chaos of the moment tore through their world like a devastating storm. In the midst of it all, Lily could only watch in horror as the Newman family, Victor, Nikki, Nick, and Victoria, were swallowed by the flames. Their hopes, their futures, everything they had worked for, vanished in an instant. And with them, the legacy of Newman Enterprises would crumble into nothingness. But as the flames roared and the smoke billowed, there was one question that lingered in the air: would anyone survive this nightmare, or was it truly the end of the Newmans and everyone caught in Aristotle's web of destruction? For Lily, there was only one certainty: the world would never be the same again. Damien and Amy sat across from each other at a quaint corner table in a local cafe, the morning sun filtering through the window, casting a warm glow on the delicate china and the quiet, peaceful surroundings. They were sharing a simple breakfast, but the conversation was far from ordinary. The weight of unspoken words and lingering memories seemed to hang in the air, as both of them navigated the delicate balance of the present and the past. Amy's voice broke the silence as she leaned in slightly, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Damien, have you ever thought about the mystery surrounding Dumas? There's something so captivating about it, so dangerous." Damien, taking a slow sip of his coffee, looked away for a moment, his gaze distant. The mention of Dumas, a name that had been looming over their lives for so long, stirred a complex mix of emotions within him. "I suppose I never thought about it the way you do." But now that you mention it, he paused, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of his cup. The thing about Dumas is, you never really know where you stand with him. I've worked for him, sure, but if I were to sit across from him now, I wouldn't even recognize the man. It's strange how much a person can change, or maybe how much we allow them to. Amy watched her son, her heart heavy with both pride and regret. She had seen the way he had transformed over the years, growing into someone more complex, more disillusioned with the world, yet still holding on to the remnants of his youthful idealism. It's unsettling, Damien. The people he's associated with, the things he's involved in. I never wanted you to be part of any of this, but here you are. And I still can't understand why you're drawn to them. Damien's face softened, a slight smile playing at the corners of his lips, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. You know, Mom, things are actually starting to make sense for me now. It's been a journey. But I'm starting to see that I'm in a better place than I was before. Working with people like them, it's not what you think. It's not always about power or corruption. Sometimes it's about survival. Amy couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness as she listened to her son speak. He was grown now, and no longer the rebellious child she had once known, but something in his voice told her that he had lost parts of himself along the way. I just don't want you to get lost in this, Damien. You're still my son, and I need to know if you'll ever forgive me for the secrets I've kept from you. For the things I've hidden from you all these years. Damien's expression softened, and he reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. His touch was reassuring, as if trying to ease the weight of her guilt. Mom, I've spent so much time thinking about this, about what you've done, and how it all fits into the bigger picture. My dad always used to tell me that forgiveness is what sets you free. I wish I could say that I've forgiven everything, that it's all water under the bridge. But there are mornings when I wake up, and the anger and hurt are still there, just beneath the surface. Amy's eyes shimmered with the pain of old wounds reopening, and she squeezed his hand tighter, as though trying to pull herself together in the face of the truth. She had always known that one day they would have to confront the secrets she had kept, but she had never imagined how much it would hurt. I never meant to hurt you, Damien. You've always been the most important thing to me. Damien gave a small, bittersweet smile, his gaze locking with hers. I know, Mom. And despite everything, I still need you in my life. Even with all the complicated feelings I have, I'm grateful to have you back. You've always been there for me, even when I didn't understand it. For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of the conversation settling between them. It was strange, almost surreal, how quickly their relationship had evolved, how much time had passed since those early days of conflict and misunderstanding. As Damien's thoughts drifted to the complex world of Dumas and the life he had chosen, he couldn't help but wonder what his father, who had always been a steady influence in his life, would have thought about all of this. You know, Dad would have loved the mystery around Dumas. He would have been fascinated by it, in his own way. But I think he would have wanted me to stay grounded, to keep my feet on the ground and not let things get too out of control. Amy's expression softened at the mention of her late husband, the man who had been the rock of their family. Your father always had a way of seeing the world clearly. Maybe that's what we both need, to see things clearly. Without all the shadows. Damien nodded thoughtfully, his grip on her hand tightening just a little. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's time for me to step back and see what really matters. The family, the people who've been there all along. The things that don't require deals with the devil or sacrificing everything for power. Amy smiled through her tears, a small glimmer of hope rising in her chest. She had always known that Damien had the potential to find his way, even if the path seemed uncertain at times. And now, as they shared this quiet moment of connection, she realized that perhaps the greatest mystery of all wasn't Dumas or the world of shadows he lived in. It was the bond between a mother and her son, and the power of forgiveness to heal even the deepest of wounds. They sat there, holding hands, knowing that the road ahead would be difficult, but with a sense of renewal and the belief that, together, they could overcome anything. Even the darkness that had threatened to tear them apart.